Okay, as you guys can tell, we got a different pace for this evening. First of all, welcome to Club and Fishy. My name is Alan. I help lead the youth ministry around here. Now, with that said, I'd like to introduce you guys to what we're doing this evening. It is Fentanyl Awareness Night, graciously put on by the Grace Commons Foundation and the Bodnarczuk family. This evening is meant to honor the life and the legacy of Mark and Alan's son, Thomas, who actually grew up in this church coming to Fishy and to Club. Formally accept Mark Bodnarczuk to the stage. Thank you. I'll pass it off.
So I thought about tonight, and as you can see, I'm an old guy, you're young, and I thought, how can I start this off? Let me first say a word about Song for Charlie. Song for Charlie is a family-run, nationwide, non-profit organization donated or dedicated to raising awareness about the dangers of the recreational use of prescription medications and the dangers of using prescription medications in the age of counterfeit pills and fentanyl poisoning. One thing I want to just be clear up front that there's a difference between overdosing when you take too much of something and being poisoned. Okay, so I'll get into that a little more, but what we're talking about here is fentanyl poisoning, where someone takes something like an Adderall or the equivalent of an aspirin or an N30 or something you could buy from a pharmacy, but it's not. It's a fake pill. And Song for Charlie calls them fentanyls. They're really filled with fentanyl. It doesn't take much to do you in. So I want to just say that tonight is for you or for someone you know. You know, the problem with this problem is people say, that's not going to happen to me. But it can, and it does. So even if you don't know the problem, I know there's at least one person in the room who knows someone who died of this very same thing. And it's in your schools, it's all around. So it's for you, for someone you know. So I think it was like 2017, 2018, my son Thomas was a sophomore. And I like to talk with him. He and I would sit and chit-chat. I think that's a little too much, Alan. And so I said, son, you know, what are you thinking about lately? Trying to get in his head. You know, what's going on? And he said, well, I'm watching a lot of YouTube videos. This guy named Jordan Peterson. You know that name? Okay, so Jordan Peterson. He probably watched 150 of these videos. So I decided, well, I bought a copy of Maps of Meaning, and then his more popular book, The 12 Rules, and my son and I began to read this together. It was a very big impact on his life. And I got to like Jordan Peterson. The guy's a true intellectual. He really is one of the most influential thinkers on the planet today. And so, when Thomas died, I contacted Jordan. And I told him that the impact that he had on Thomas's life. And he posted on Thomas's memorial site. Right? Here's a guy that had nothing to gain for doing this. And he posted a memorial site. It's still up there. And 3 years later, my wife and I connected with him again in Denver. we went to see him. And I've grown to really respect this guy. I mean, I listen to his podcasts and whatnot. And I saw one last week about a young woman. Her name was Clementine Green. Maybe you've not heard of her, but this is an enormous legal battle that's now going on. She was given hormone blockers starting at 11 or 12 and had a double mastectomy at 14. And now she's detransitioning. And she's now suing the people that did this to her. And you know, I got to thinking, when Thomas was alive, he used to come and tell me there were 16 genders out there. I don't know how many there are, but it's a problem, right? That people have. Even when Thomas was at Altona in 6th grade, he would come home and there was a social structure already in 6th grade. And he told us about drifters. You know, the ones that walked around the outside of the cafeteria because they had nobody to sit with. Well, Thomas would befriend them, but there's a problem that kids have. Online bullying, in-person bullying. So the question is, how do you deal with this crazy stuff? I'll call it, how do you deal with this world of sin that we live in? Just call it what it is. Right? Well, some people use prescription medications recreationally at a party to lighten up and have a good time. Self-medicating. This is partly what happened to my son, you know. He had some anxiety. It was the pandemic. He graduated from high school in 2020 remotely because California, where we were living at the time, was really shut down. And the message I want to leave with you tonight, oh boy, my clicker is many think it won't happen to you. They think it won't happen to you, but it does and it can. So that's what the bottom line here is, to realize that my son was a Christian, he was an Eagle Scout, he wasn't a drug addict. He had the typical anxiety that kids going into college got accepted to UNC, all the schools, but with COVID, he was doing 2-year college in our dining room in California because why come to Colorado and sit in your dorm and not go to class, right? So that's like some background. What am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about fake pills. Right? I'm going to talk about, how they're spread throughout our country these days. Now, if you have burning questions, raise your hand. I'll stop. If not, we can do the questions at the end. So here's what I want to tell you. The drug landscape has changed. All right? It has gone from the farm to the laboratory. Used to be you had to have a bunch of land and grow a bunch of poppies, process it, and your problem was that when they shipped it up north, everybody that touched it cut it. So by the time you got it, it was weaker. There's nothing in it. Now, with fentanyl, where the precursors can be mixed in a laboratory, it's 50 to 100 times stronger than heroin or morphine. Now it's enormously powerful. There's a new supply and demand. You know, you've heard of this opiate pandemic we've had, where people were addicted to these things and they pulled them off the market. Well, the cartels, they were trying to find the strongest thing to replace this. The strongest thing they could, the cheapest thing, so they could make money. They would maximize the batch yield, how many they make, and reduce the cost. Do you know the cartels in Mexico are the 5th largest employer in the country? They have brochures. This is big business. They want to create repeat customers, right? Which means they want to get you hooked. And you know, I saw saw an interview with one of these guys mixing up a vat of this stuff in a jungle in a field. And they said, you know, this kills people, you know. He said, well, I got to feed my family. You know, that's the dynamic that's going on. So they say, well, we're going to mix this stuff up. Some people are going to die. It's just a cost of doing business. That's how they think about it. So I already mentioned this. There's a difference between overdosing and being poisoned. By taking something, my son bought a single Xanax pill. One Xanny on Snapchat for 15 bucks. But it wasn't a Xanny. It contained over 3 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. And my wife and I found him dead in his bed when we went to wake him up for church on Sunday morning. Right? So the fact is, he didn't overdose. He was poisoned. And that's what's happening to thousands and thousands and thousands of kids. It used to be, when I was growing up, if I drank a 6-pack or did something, I had a headache the next day. There's no room for error today. One pill can kill. One pill can kill. And that's why this message is so important. What they estimate used to be that about 70% of the pills that they're confiscating had a lethal dose in it. What I read in the New York Times is that it's now down to about 50%. What you've got is the cartels are reading the newspapers, and they don't like all the publicity they're getting. It's in the State of the Union, all these precursors coming from China, getting mixed in Mexico, coming off of the border. So they're trying to get the mix down. And so they're recruiting kids from Mexican universities who are chemistry majors to help them fine-tune this thing so they're not killing so many people and they get them hooked. But why should you care about it? Well, you might not know you're taking it. That's what I'm saying. You know, you might think you're taking a Percocet, an Oxycontin, a Xanax, even Adderall. If you're ADHD, you take an Adderall, but it's not an Adderall. It puts you at serious risk. It's not just pills. I talked to a person just recently. It's in all street drugs, so it's mixed into cocaine. They're putting it in, some people put it in marijuana. Right? So who is Charlie? Right? Song for Charlie. Charlie, he grew up in Pasadena. He was 3 weeks from graduating with a bachelor's degree in economics from Santa Clara University. He was in his dorm room. His buddies went out having a couple of drinks before the semester started. He had a job interview. He said, I'm going to stay behind. He had some back problems from a long drive. He bought what he thought was some Oxycontins. And he took one to ease his back pain. And he died in his bed, right there in his dorm. And the door was open and people were walking by, oh, look at Charlie, he fell asleep playing video games. But he wasn't asleep. So he's 6'2", was, again, not a drug addict, a good kid. He bought a Percocet. He was dead in 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. The way I got affiliated with Song for Charlie was through my wife, Ellen. She came to me the day after we found Thomas dead in his room and said, I need to talk to someone. So I found her a PhD psychologist who specialized in grief. And about a week or two into this, the woman sent Ellen a link to an article in the Mercury Sun-Times, the San Jose paper where we were, about Song for Charlie. So Ed and Mary Turnian, who run that, was Charlie's mom and dad. And I called them. My wife contacted them. I talked with Ed just a couple of weeks after Thomas died. And we've been friends and colleagues and have been partnering with Song for Charlie since 2021. And I can tell you, long after this talk is gone, Song for Charlie is just a facts man kind of approach to dealing with this. There's all kinds of resources for youth groups, for kids in schools. So, who is Thomas? Well, he was a Christian, he was an Eagle Scout, he went to Fishy. He was edgy. He stood apart from the societal norms. He was very bright. And like I said, he bought a single Xanax, and that one pill killed him. Who else is it killing? Well, the whole spectrum of kids. The ages are 13 to 38. It's just absolutely amazing. And the fact is, you can't spot a fake one. This is what I'm trying to say more than anything. Don't think, oh, well, this plug, you know what a plug is, right? A dealer. This plug is good, man. You're not going to do anything. Well, the whole stream is just full of these things. They estimate 250 million of these things floating around. So you can't tell the difference between these things. So now, Alan, click that. I'm going to show you a short video.
You've heard about pills killing young people, right? A teenager takes what they thought was a prescription pill and never wakes up. We're not talking about a drug overdose, accidental or otherwise. We're talking about being fatally poisoned by a single pill, one that looks like a legit Xanax or Percocet or Oxycontin. Except these pills aren't legit. They're counterfeit, fake. They can kill you within minutes. And it's happening all around you. The fastest growing group of victims is young and inexperienced. They take pills for different reasons. Some of them are experimenting, others are stressed out and self-medicating. Many victims died at home in their beds after swallowing just one pill. Every young person is at risk. So what's going on? We live in a quick fix, pill-popping culture, and we've been taught to trust prescription pills. In some cases, these medications are necessary, but they can also cause addiction. That's why we're in the midst of an opioid epidemic. So many people in the US became addicted to opioids that drug dealers started making fake pills to meet demand. The active ingredient of choice for these counterfeit pills? Fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid that's so potent it has to be highly regulated. There's no standard amount of fentanyl in these illegally made pills. They're not prescription medications. They're just thrown together in people's basements and garages with other cheap ingredients like filler powder, impressed into pill form. The dosage is never even. That's why they're so deadly. But fentanyl can be cheaply imported, and it's also highly addictive, which makes it ideal for creating fake pills. The drug cartels got involved too. They started to produce these counterfeit prescription pills containing fentanyl, known as fentapills, on a massive scale, flooding the US with millions of fakes dressed up to look like the real thing. You can't tell them apart. Authorities can't fix this or make it go away, but you don't have to be the next victim. If you don't know where your pills are coming from, don't take them. Don't believe sellers on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, or any app. Don't believe friends who get pills from supposedly reliable dealers. Don't believe someone who says a pill has been tested. You may have heard of test strips that can detect fentanyl in illegally made drugs, but they're not reliable with pills, where fentanyl can be unevenly distributed. There's no way to figure out whether a pill contains fentanyl without grinding it up and dissolving it. In other words, destroying it. So if a drug comes to you in pill form, it hasn't been tested, period. And even if you test one pill in a batch, you have no way of knowing whether the other pills contain fentanyl. If it's not from a doctor or pharmacist, it's not legit. No random pills. Now you know the facts. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know. The more people who learn about fentanyls, the safer we're all going to be. You didn't create this problem, but you can be part of the solution. Help us spread the word. One pill can kill.
So how did this happen? You know, fentanyl's been around a long time. And you go back to 2012, and this is the percent of all drug mortalities or deaths. This is ages from 14 to 73. You see, fentanyl is just a small part back in 2012. The rest of it, look at this, these are prescription medications. There's meth, there's heroin, right? Well, by 2017, the vast majority, the percent of mortality is about fentanyl, and the ages are all the way down. By 2021, my son died on May 2nd, 2021. This is the world he lived in. The percent of death, and look at the age, down to 14. So what is fentanyl? It's a potent, 100 times more powerful than morphine. See that? That's a lethal dose. That is a lethal dose. It's synthetic. Like I said, from the farm to the laboratory. You can mix it on a tabletop. It's a painkiller. I mean, they use it in patches for people who are dying of back cancer, really, really, painful diseases. They'll use it for that. But it's really regulated in a very methodical way. So how are they made? Well, if it's an FDA approved one, it's down into the micrograms in the patch. They'll put it on. But what happens in these laboratories is they're made, like I said, in fields or filthy basements. And the doses, like you saw on the tip of that pencil, those are milligrams. There's 1,000 milligrams in a microgram, or 1,000 micrograms in a milligram. So that is just an enormous amount of the stuff. How are they sold? Well, you guys know what this looks like. On Snapchat, I read today, they're selling it on Craigslist now. They're sold illegally in parks and schools. They're in everything. They're putting them in everything. And it's in like I said, in street drugs, in ecstasy, cocaine. Now, why are they deadly? It's what's called the chocolate chip effect. So they're made, instead of the actual medications, they have fentanyl. But then what happens is they're made so carelessly that, they mix them together. And there are many cases, like I say here, where a guy and his girlfriend will cut a single pill in half. He dies, she doesn't, because the fentanyl is clustered in one side of the pill. That's called the chocolate chip effect. So can you take your friend's pills? So, oh no, I got a buddy over here said he got this out of his mother's medicine cabinet. The answer is no. Only your friend or your friend's mother should take these pills. Here's a guy that died of that very kind of thing. No one, don't take any pills from anyone. What about pills that someone said is tested? You already saw this in the video. You can't do it with a test strip. You got to grind it up because of the chocolate chip effect. It's not distributed across the pill. It's impossible to know when they're tested. So if somebody tells you that this pill has been tested, it's not correct. It cannot be. Look again, how dangerous is it? This is ages 8 through 12, right? And this goes back to 2000. So look at the decrease in teen drug use, right? But look at the increase in fentanyl right here. So most drugs use is going down. This one is going down. Okay, so now, Alan, we're going to clip this. I want to show you what an overdose looks like. We're going to have a little video here.
Narcan is an opioid blocker. It's going to go into the bloodstream and knock any opioid off of the receptor. And it's going to reverse that overdose so that that person has a chance at life. We're using the term Narcan, which is a brand name. The actual generic is naloxone, and there are many brands. The side effects of intranasal naloxone or Narcan, if somebody was not actually overdosing, the chance of having a serious health problem as a result are very small.
This is what Narcan looks like. If you're ever in a situation where you're going to administer Narcan, you should have already called 911. To administer Narcan itself, all you have to do is take it out of the package. It looks like this. You're going to insert the plunger into the person's nose, either nostril, and then press the pink button down. After that, you're going to want to clock about 2 minutes. The person should respond to the Narcan within those 2 minutes. If they're unconscious and not breathing, you will literally see them go and begin breathing again. If that doesn't happen within the first 2 minutes, continue doing that every 2 minutes until the person responds. If they don't respond after 3 doses, you're going to want to start giving rescue breaths.
One more thing to remember about Narcan is that anytime it's given, a person needs to go to the hospital. Opioids can last longer than Narcan. So the Narcan might reverse the overdose initially, and then the Narcan wears off, and guess what's still in your bloodstream? The opioid. Can find those receptors and they can re-OD.
Narcan and naloxone in general is now approved over the counter. Everyone should be trained in how to recognize and respond to an overdose.
So I'm passing around a Narcan, naloxone. I bought it at Walgreens. Why haven't I heard about this before? Just show of hands. How many people have heard some of this before? Okay. All right. Well, you're not going to hear it from your parents. The first time I heard the word fentanyl, I had 6 police officers and the coroner in my dining room. Parents just don't even know. They hear it on TV. It's on, But you know what the truth is? You don't take this seriously until it happens to you or someone you know. And then it's too late. That's why we say tell everybody you can. A lot of, the old view, like I belong to the Elks Club, and they have the largest drug awareness program in the United States. That's why I joined. But it's all about addiction and things like that. And not that that's not a serious problem, but this is not addiction. This is kids experimenting or just hanging out. It's a much different problem. And I said this before, it used to be, in the 60s, that using drugs was a journey, Jimi Hendrix playing the Star Spangled Banner backwards with his teeth at Woodstock, all right? But there weren't drugs out there. That one was masquerading as something else, and it's not going to kill you with one pill. It's a very different landscape. So what are some alternatives? Here they are. Sleep well, get some therapy, faith in God. Physical and spiritual health, being part of Fishy and Club, it's a good place. And ask a trusted adult. Maybe one of the youth counselors here. And maybe, again, remember, this talk is for you or someone you know. So maybe it's not, that you have a problem, but maybe somebody you know has a problem. Or you're going to find out that someone has a problem. What should you take away from this presentation? No random pills. No exceptions. Only take medications you get from your doctor, from the pharmacy. Don't trust the other pills. They're going to tell you you're tested, forget it. If someone's overdosing, give them Narcan. Take care of your physical and mental health. We actually, what does an overdose look like? So click this.
The big three signs of an opioid overdose, such as one from fentanyl, are slow to no breathing, unconsciousness, and pinpoint pupils. How you can check for those three? For slow to no breathing, you're gonna place your hand on the person's chest to feel for the rise and fall of their breath. You can also place your hand under their nose or over their mouth and feel for their warm breath. To check for unconsciousness, you're gonna start by shouting the person's name and asking if they can hear you. If they don't respond to you verbally engaging with them, you're gonna cause some painful stimuli. To do that, you're going to give them what's called a trap pinch. You're going to pinch the corner between their neck and their shoulder as hard as you can. If you try that on yourself, it hurts. So if you do that to somebody who might be overdosing, they're not going to respond. The third sign that you're going to check for, which is the telltale sign of an opioid overdose, is pinpoint pupils. So how you're going to check for that, you can use a flashlight like the one on your smartphone. The person's probably going to be unconscious, so you're going to lift their eyelid and shine the flashlight into their eye for 3 to 5 seconds. When you move the flashlight away, normal people, you will see their pupil get bigger when the light is no longer in their eye. Someone with a fentanyl overdose, their pupil is going to remain pinpoint, very tiny in the middle of their eye.
It is absolutely critical that you call 911 when somebody is overdosed, because that makes sure that they get the medical attention they need, and that could very much save their life. Many states have what's called a Good Samaritan law, which protects people who call 911 when they're in the possession of drugs from being arrested for having those drugs in the moment, because these laws are meant to encourage people to do the right thing when someone's overdosing.
Spread the word. Tell people. Blame me. I went to this thing at Fishy, and this guy was talking about fentanyl. Maybe your friends aren't even talking about it. So what I'd say is thank you for your time. There's a lot more information on the Song for Charlie website. I'm a member of Grace Commons. There's my contact information. So, questions? Comments? Yeah.
So what about things like that? Or like ibuprofen?
Okay, so the question was, what about things like aspirin or ibuprofen? I don't know that they're putting in that. You're probably too young to remember, but there was a time when Tylenol was tampered with, and they sealed it up because some people died from this very kind of thing. So I don't think if you buy an over-the-counter drug like that, I don't think it's a problem, as long as it's sealed and whatnot. Yes.
So you can get your life saved from taking fentanyl?
Yeah, so the question was, you can get your life saved using fentanyl. If you use this thing I was passing around, you put it up their nose and you spray it, and they will wake up, and then you call 911. You have to get them to the hospital. That was a pediatric doctor that was saying that, the fentanyl could last longer. I mean, again, Ellen and I didn't know anything about this. I don't know, could we have helped our son? I mean, he came home 10 minutes after 9 at night from work. We chatted with him. He went to his bedroom. About 9:30, he called DoorDash. He ordered food. He took this stuff, and then he never lived to eat the food. We only knew that because we saw the charge on his phone. He called from the phone. So he never knew it hit him. Other questions? Yeah.
So a lot of these kids that lost their lives from this, a lot of them didn't have problems with drugs.
Right, and that's the scary part, right? They're not drug addicts. They're just experimenting. They're just hanging out. They go to a party, and somebody says, "Take one of these, one time maybe," and that's it. Yes.
There's no one drugs for asthma that you know of?
Say it a little louder.
Do you know if any fentanyl has ever been put in, like, over-the-counter asthma things?
No, you know, again, those kind of things are sealed, and they're FDA approved and sealed, just like the Tylenol question. Look, I'm not trying to scare you. It's not like you can't go to Walmart and buy an over-the-counter drug. What I'm saying is, you can't buy on Snapchat or Craigslist or something somebody tells you is one thing and it's not. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to make you afraid of everything. But no random pills is what I'm saying. Doesn't matter whether, you know, as it turns out, the guy who sold my son this pill, he knew my son in high school. So my son trusted him. He's not going to do anything to hurt me. And that was probably correct, right? But that guy didn't know where it came from. The cops asked him, well, where did you get it? Well, I don't know, some white guy on the internet. So you don't know the drug source itself is so poisoned all the way through that even if the person giving it to you or selling it to you would not hurt you, that doesn't mean it's not a deadly thing. You don't want to take that chance. Others? Does this make sense? If my wife and I could save one life tonight, it'd be worth it. Now, Ellen has some cards. Last year, I published a memoir that is on Amazon.com. And so my wife's going to pass these out. There's a card, and you know, there's a QR code in the back if you want to get the book. But if you don't want to get the book, keep the card as a remembrance of what we did tonight and what we talked about. I want everybody to have them. Alan, are we there?
Yeah, we're great. If everybody just wants to give a round of applause for Mark. And then one last thing, we're going to welcome Courtney Ballard to the stage on behalf of the foundation.
Hi. This is hard. This is hard and scary. So thank you for coming out on Wednesday night to hear hard, scary things. I hope learning about this will be helpful, and if not to you, to someone you know. 2 of my kids are over here, and it was only when I started talking to Mark that I became aware of how scary and how quick something like this would happen. So I hope just having this made you feel safer instead of more afraid, that you know a little bit about the landscape and what you can do. Ellen, could you come up here too? Surprise. So right here, next to Mark, we have this plaque that we just put up. We're calling it the unveiling tonight. So I want to tell you a little bit about it. So Mark and Ellen have partnered with Grace Commons Foundation. That's who I get to work for. And they have made an investment in youth ministry at this church in Thomas's name. This means that they, along with Thomas's friends and family, have made gifts and commitments that will support events like this tonight, that will send students like you on trips and retreats, and will also do things for ministry that we don't even know about, we might have even dreamed about, that will happen in the future. To mark this commitment tonight, we unveil the Thomas Larson Bodnarczuk Memorial Plaque here in the student space. This plaque commemorates Thomas's life, his faith, and his loving parents' commitment to honor his memory and to keep his legacy alive. So when you see this plaque on a Wednesday night or on a Sunday morning, I hope you'll remember that Thomas was once a student here just like you, and that he was deeply loved, and that you are deeply loved. So Mark and Ellen, thank you for this legacy of love in Thomas's name.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. One final thing I want to do, so we'll close out. It's about 8:10 right now. So if there's some things, we'll just kind of hang out here, go into the courtyard, but if you guys want to process some things that you heard tonight, leaders, can you raise your hand? For me, yeah, find, students look around the room, find one of the leaders, maybe pull them aside, say, hey, I'd just like to talk about some things. If you feel more comfortable asking Mark, Ellen, or Courtney, just lay on the side that may have been a little more nerve-wracking to address in front of the group, they're available as well. Kelly here, if you want to raise your hand, she's a mental health professional specializing in addiction as well. So if you guys want to talk to a mental health professional, Kelly is available to talk as well. With that said, thank you guys so much for your time, your attention, listening to Mark's story. But yes, Thomas was most definitely a beloved member of our community, and this is the least we could do to honor him and his memory. So thank you so much. If everybody could just give one more round of applause.